Hey folks, Dan here. I wanted to talk for a few minutes today about thinking about losses. So here we are back in the ugly studio in front of the plane wall. Yeah, I was thinking about a few things that folks encounter with losses, and I wanted to sort of share how I think about them to the degree to which it's, interesting or helpful. Now, a couple of things that I'll note at the beginning that I think probably warrant their own video. One is I see a lot of people lamenting about their bag holder status. I have a lot of feelings about that. I've been there before, and it's really helped me. Like the annoyance and pain and frustration of that has helped me kind of turn a corner where I'm pretty relentless with cutting losses now. Um, but this is just to say that's a certain type of loss that I think plays on the minds of traders, and I think that that warrants its own future video. And then the other one is centered around what you do with losses that are incurred that you feel you're blaming somebody else for, or that somebody else caused you this loss. I think of this in the sense of a couple of things. One, the sort of outlash at or backlash, I don't know what the right word is, at like hedge funds and, any sort of body or institution that's taking large short positions that's driving down the price of a stock and people incurring losses because of that. And then the other one would be like furus, right? Like folks who are taking YouTubers or people on Twitter or stock twits or in a Discord or something like that, and they're just copying every trade that they do. And then when they get stuck feeling like a bag holder or with a big loss that they actually cut losses on, blaming that person for their losses. Um, I have a lot of feelings about that too because I've been there as well. And but I think that that probably warrants its own separate video. So we'll do a video on each of those down the line. For this one in particular, I was just thinking about sort of the contemplation around losses. So I have a couple of different ideas depending on what category it fits into. So one would be like the planned loss. So sort of a loss that you have because you take the loss because you were following your plan, right? These to me are pretty cut and dry. It's sort of like I had my risk to reward in line, and I knew that my risk was, try to take a trade as close to risk as possible, so that if you're incurring that risk, that it's as soon as possible, meaning the loss is as small as possible. And so in that case, I think of that as sort of like doing a good job following a plan. And the hard thing to sort of mesh together is that you did the right thing, you did a good job of following your plan, but you're not rewarded with a win, right? You sort of have to think of it in the reverse, I think, which is you are not penalized by an extremely outsized loss, which could put your account or future trading capital at risk, because you took bigger than necessary losses. So it's weird to think that your reward for following your plan is that you don't lose more money. But I do think that that's kind of a mental trick or a framework that you need to maybe consider on those ones. So the planned loss, I sort of end up sticking in that bucket. Good job. You limited your losses. Yes, it's a loss, but you did the best that you could to limit them by following your plan. This is my self-talk, so when I say you, I always mean me. And then the other one is kind of the unexpected loss, meaning if you have like pretty solid criteria for entering a trade and you took that entry and say a trade fit all of your criteria, so it looked as slam dunkish as it could, right? Nothing is, of course, actually a slam dunk, but there are certain setups that look really, really positive and really solid, and that's what we try to do to give ourselves a better than chance possibility of making profit. And in those situations, I try to do one of two things, or probably both things. One, I first try to sort of analyze it and dissect it, and quickly see if there's something that maybe I could have missed that was there that I maybe ignored, or maybe I sort of fudged a little bit to make it look like as good of a trade as I thought it was, or as I convinced myself that it was. And if that's the case, then I sort of jot that down and put that on sort of a sub list of rules. Right, I have these main rules. I put these on my Twitter. You can see them there. And then I have sort of sub rules, which are additional traps that I fall into, that I put myself into, that I just want to note and say, hey, make sure you don't forget about these things. So if we can learn something from it by identifying a trap that maybe you fell into or something you ignored, that's great. The other one would be if, it legitimately fit all the criteria and it just went against you. Those I try to analyze, and if I don't see anything, and it literally is just that, I try to chalk those up pretty quickly and just get them out of my mind. Don't worry about it. There's not really a big lesson to take there. It's just sort of a resiliency endeavor at that point, and you just got to sort of let it go. Now, the only sort of caveat that I would have to that is unpacking if you hit a losing streak. Right? And if you do hit a losing streak, maybe considering, okay, is my system broken? I talked a bit about this in the last video, but there's a big difference, I think, between your system works and you just had a trade go against you, right? It's not for any particular obvious reason. There wasn't necessarily anything maybe you could have done about it, but it just went against you. Versus the system that I've been using, that I built my account from, I'm just making up numbers, from $500 to $1,500, that's now gotten me back down to $800, and I'm following the exact same system, but I'm just hitting loss after loss after loss after loss. This could be sort of some friction points in the market. This could be some macro effects, right? Maybe the market has turned a different way. Maybe there's sector rotation, maybe there's a slew of different things, and maybe just that system, for whatever reason, isn't working in this environment. And so the ability to identify that and say, okay, maybe I do need to consider tinkering with my system here to figure out how to rejigger it to best fit the situation today. There can be value to that. The danger there obviously is that you're fixing something that isn't actually broken, and maybe you just hit a bit of a cold streak. But it may just take a little bit of trying to analyze that to figure out what exactly is happening. Is my system broke? Have I stopped following my system? Did I miss something? Or do I need to just kind of stick with it and the system I think is still intact. But those are the big things that I try to focus on. And then once I take a learning from a loss, or once I, decide that there isn't a learning from a loss, I really just try to let them go really quickly, not ruminate on them, not revenge trade, right? That's maybe deserves its own video too. You lost a bunch of money on XYZ stock and you're like, I'm going to make that money back on XYZ stock. There's also sort of a similar form of that, which is sort of like revenge trading in the day, right? Maybe overnight positions that you held or something, they really beat you up at open, you're super red on the day, and then you come in, you're like, I got to make this money back today. I want this to be a green day. That can be really challenging too if you put yourself in a position where you need to make a bunch of profitable trades right now, versus having some element of like, if there isn't a thing to trade, or if I can't spot a thing to trade, I'm not going to trade. And so I think forcing the trades like that is also pretty challenging. So not getting overly emotional in that sense, right? Where you're putting yourself in an impulsive situation where you're making decisions that aren't ultimately good for yourself or your account. And revenge trading, I think, takes many different forms. So I'm talking myself into, maybe there's a little bit of a mini series on revenge trading and the different forms that it can take. But that's how I try to think about my losses, is sort of the buckets that I think of putting them into, and that's sort of how I try to learn from them and let them go and move on, and use them as data points, like I said, for the system that I'm trading at that given point in time. And does that system still work? Does it still make sense? Or does it need some tinkering? All right, folks, I hope that your trading week got off to a good start. And as always, I appreciate you watching. I will see you in the next video.